I came to this conference thinking I wasn't going to tell this story, but since I've already told it to Saul and several others, I might as well share it. In 1992, I was attending the University of Washington. My professors included George Martin, who was probably the world's expert on Werner syndrome at the time, and Norm Wolf and Peter Rabinovich, who are, Peter is the person who did the MCAT mouse that has a longer lifespan. And I said, well, what is the most valuable thing in the world to me? And I wasn't married. I didn't have any kids. Because my post-Oracle days, I had gone back to school and was educating myself in a totally different field, biology. Didn't intend to get involved in aging, but the professors were interested in it, and I looked at it as a big problem, a big mystery. It was unsolved, and if you looked at the literature, you could easily get 10,000 pages of literature on why people age. And so I then started up a company and employed about 40 scientists in Russia. At the time, Russia was a very chaotic place to work. And we did some research, published some articles, built the first high-throughput DNA sequencer in Moscow in 1995. It was about comparable to the effort that ABI put into building their high-throughput DNA sequencer that the human genome was done with, except we did it on a budget of more like $40,000, which shows you how much cheaper things can be if you do them the right way. At any rate, since I had exhausted about 90% of my net worth in the process of that adventure, but we had some intellectual property and brought it back to the United States, and I wormed my way into a meeting with Larry Ellison, who is currently the fourth richest individual in the world. Larry was interested in this. We had 2 lunches, about 2 hours probably of his time, and I got invited to a dinner at Larry's house that was Larry, Steve Jobs, and the Nobel Prize winner Joshua Lederberg. And over dinner, we talked a little bit about aging. Not very much at all, but sufficiently enough that Larry knew me. He knew what I could do. So there's a personal trust issue. You have to know you're dealing with reputable people. I had put the money in. I had made a personal commitment. And it became clear over dinner that, and I think Dave knows this, that some people simply don't want to think about the idea. Steve Jobs, for example, came across as not being interested in extending his lifespan. Of course, Steve Jobs has other more pressing, closer problems that he's been dealing with. But at any rate, Larry was convinced. Larry put $4 million into the first round of Avios Sciences Group, $4 million into the second round of Avios Science Group. And this is one of the problems historically, though I don't think it's true anymore, existed with funding aging research, was that what the primary project Avios Sciences Group was doing was centenarian genotyping. So we were collecting samples from centenarians and we were attempting to genotype them to find the aging genes. Those particular genes, I decided, were too many. There weren't enough centenarians in the world, although they were going to be too expensive to get access to be able to make that project successful. So after 2 years of intensive effort, I shut down Avios Sciences Group. And I returned over $2 million to the investors. Now, it's rare to see a company that will return that quantity of money to investors, particularly after they've spent a lot of their own. But that's what we did. And Larry kind of knew that okay, it was a good idea, worthy cause, but you know, that approach wasn't going to work. And so Larry subsequently funded the Ellison Medical Foundation, has put over $200 million into the Ellison Medical Foundation, and a lot of good gerontology research has been done over the last decade based on that funding. And what Larry has been funding is good people doing good research with, you know, good ideas. But, as I mentioned in my presentation, There is a key difference between research, which can suck down a lot of money very unproductively, as I learned, and engineering, which is where you have an idea that you can turn into something that will start dealing with the problem. And I think we are now at the stage where we know enough about what aging is that you can begin to engineer serious solutions. And telomeres happen to be one important thing. And I've had several discussions here with the telomere people basically saying, you can do it, your idea is what you want to do, but you have to do it carefully. Because if telomere extension results in the same type of problem we had with gene therapies, there's going to be a collapse of interest. Oh, it'll be, and it went wrong all again, just like gene therapy did. And so you want to be sure you can make it work and then gain the reputation and gain the trust of the people in moving the whole thing forward. But there are people, Larry is somewhat of I wouldn't say he's eccentric, but he's willing to take risks. Larry funded a company back in the early 1980s called N-Cube, and most people have never heard of it. But what it was a company that was building multi-processor supercomputers. And the guy who was running it was the best chip designer that Intel ever had. And nobody knows of N-Cube today. So, these are risky businesses. The main thing I gathered is that you better know your science really well. And people who have the resources are willing to take the risks. For example, Paul Allen funding the SETI telescope array. Very good idea, and some good science will come out of that. But I could give a long talk about, but I don't think it will ever, hear ET. But it'll do good radio astronomy. So, but the basic message is, people who have the money will fund these types of projects, but you really have to put together a very good team and make sure you're going after something very concrete, and you've got to be able to reference the specific things that will make a difference.
My name is Richard Manley. I come from a community college background in education, and I think a good model for what you're talking about here is the endowments of major universities, and many of you I know are from prestigious universities. That's not my expertise, but I know that those people know how to target the people who have an interest in those things. They do the same thing in scholarship departments in any major university in the country. And they find people who have an interest, someone who's had cancer in their family, a very wealthy family, and they don't want to see that to happen to someone else. But those endowment people, I think if you got close to some of those people, talk to them about how they find those individuals and set out and make that personal relationship that he's talking about. I've heard, even at the community college level, they get into endowments, and I've heard our person talk about how to target the alma mater, the people, the graduates who have the money, and they do research to find out, and they get the right people who do have that credibility with that person, who will talk to them with the college. And so I think if someone in this group goes to some of those endowment folks, they can teach us how to do that work to find the people that have the interest and will support it. I think that's a very good thing. One other thing I want to suggest, I talked to Kevin at the break, it's back to the social networks, is myself, I'm recently retired, and this is a passion of mine, and I am looking for something else to do. And we talked about these social networks. I'm a cancer survivor, 17 years, using natural means. And we might be able to develop a volunteer corps where some of us, like myself, and other people in life extension, we could ask for volunteers. You could train us to talk about these things and get out the message that you want us to get out. We could go on Facebook, YouTube, or wherever the social networks that we need to, that we decide we want to target, and we could lead the discussion groups. We can talk about our own experience and why it's so valuable, because people my age, I'm 63, almost 64, and I just got on Facebook about a month ago. I have about 6 of my high school graduating class get on a week. And so we talk to each other all the time. That's going to increase. And we have that credibility with each other. And so we can spread that message and talk about this, and we can talk to them about the value of it because we've lived that lifestyle just like all the people here. So I think that's a viable alternative to spreading the word at the grassroots, if you will.